Welcome to a very special long-form session here at Better English Step by Step. I am so glad you decided to press play and spend this time with us. If you are joining us after listening to a high-level, complex podcast or a difficult lecture on the psychology of decision-making, you might feel a little bit tired. You might feel like your brain is full of big academic words like heuristics, cognitive biases, or loss aversion. It is very common to listen to those advanced lessons and feel like you understand the concepts, but then feel completely stuck when it is your turn to speak. You might think that to sound smart, you need to use those same heavy, difficult words, but today we are going to change that. We are going to show you that true fluency and professional confidence come from your ability to explain complex ideas using simple, clear English. We are going to take those big psychological concepts and break them down into patterns you can actually use in a meeting, in a job interview, or just a conversation with a friend.
That is such an important point, Anna. I remember when I first started learning about these topics, I felt like I had to swallow a dictionary just to explain why I made a simple choice. It felt like if I didn't use the word heuristic, I wasn't being intellectual enough. But the reality is that the most effective communicators in the world are the ones who can make the most difficult ideas sound easy. Today, we want you to relax. This is a safe space to practice. We are going to go slowly. We are going to repeat everything many times. You don't need to take notes unless you really want to. You can just listen, follow our voices, and repeat after us. This is how we move English from your notebook into your long-term memory. And if you enjoy this calm, step-by-step way of learning, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. It really helps us keep creating these long sessions for you, and it ensures you never miss a chance to build your confidence, one step at a time.
Let's start with the first big idea that often comes up in decision-making podcasts, heuristics. That sounds like a very scary scientific word, doesn't it? But in simple English, a heuristic is just a mental shortcut. It is a way our brain saves energy by making a quick decision based on past experience instead of thinking about every single detail. Think about when you go to the supermarket and you buy the same brand of cereal you always buy. You don't read every box on the shelf. You use a mental shortcut. You think, I liked this before, so I will buy it again. That is a heuristic. In a professional setting, instead of saying, we are relying on a heuristic, you can simply say, we are using a shortcut. Or we are making a quick decision based on what worked before. Let's practice that pattern together. Listen to me first. We are using a mental shortcut. Now you try saying that out loud. We are using a mental shortcut. I like how that sounds. It feels much more natural. Let's try a variation of that. Sometimes a shortcut is good, but sometimes it leads to mistakes. So we might need to say, we should avoid taking shortcuts here. This tells people you want to be careful. Let's repeat that together. We should avoid taking shortcuts here. Let's say it one more time, slowly. We should avoid taking shortcuts here. When you say this, you sound like a thoughtful leader. You are showing that you understand the psychology of the situation without needing to use the academic term. Anna, what is another way we can explain this concept using even simpler words?
We can use the phrase, a rule of thumb. This is a very common idiom in English. A rule of thumb is a simple principle that is usually true, even if it isn't always perfect. It's another way to describe a mental shortcut. For example, a rule of thumb for me is that if a task takes less than 2 minutes, I do it immediately. That is my mental shortcut. Let's practice that phrase, a rule of thumb. Try it now, a rule of thumb. Now let's put it into a full sentence. As a rule of thumb, we usually hire people with 3 years of experience. Your turn. As a rule of thumb, we usually hire people with 3 years of experience. This is the goal of today's lesson. We take a big concept like heuristics, and we give you 3 simple ways to say it: a shortcut, a quick decision, or a rule of thumb. That makes so much sense. It takes the pressure off. Now let's look at another very famous concept, confirmation bias. You hear this everywhere lately. People say, oh, that's just confirmation bias. But what does it actually mean for a B1 or B2 learner? It means we only look for information that proves we are already right. We ignore the information that says we are wrong. It is like having a filter on your eyes. To explain this simply, you can say, we are only seeing what we want to see. This is such a powerful sentence. It's clear, it's emotional, and everyone understands it. Let's practice that. We are only seeing what we want to see. Try that now. We are only seeing what we want to see.
That is a great one, David. Another way to say it in a professional meeting is, we might be ignoring other perspectives. This is a very polite way to tell your team that they are being biased. Instead of accusing them of having a cognitive bias, which sounds very technical and maybe a bit aggressive, you are suggesting that they open their minds. Let's practice that polite version. We might be ignoring other perspectives. Listen to the flow of that sentence. We might be ignoring other perspectives. Try it with me. We might be ignoring other perspectives. This is the step-by-step method in action. We understand the deep psychology, and then we find the perfect simple sentence to express it. Let's try one more for this topic. We are looking for reasons to agree with ourselves. Repeat that. We are looking for reasons to agree with ourselves.
I think people really appreciate that kind of honesty in a conversation. It shows you are self-aware. Now, let's move to a third concept that often confuses learners: loss aversion. In the C2 podcasts, they talk about this as the idea that the pain of losing something is twice as strong as the joy of gaining something. It's why we stay in bad jobs or keep old clothes we don't need. We are afraid of losing what we have. But you don't need to say loss aversion. You can say, we are afraid of losing, or we are playing it too safe. Let's practice that. We are playing it too safe. It's a great idiom. It means you are being too cautious because you don't want to lose anything. Try it. We are playing it too safe.
And a variation for the workplace would be, we are focusing too much on the risk. This explains loss aversion perfectly. If you are in a meeting and everyone is afraid to start a new project, you can say, I think we are focusing too much on the risk. You are identifying the psychological problem without using the technical name. Let's practice that slowly. I think we are focusing too much on the risk. Now, all together. I think we are focusing too much on the risk. One more time for your memory. I think we are focusing too much on the risk.
This is really helping me feel more confident already. It's like we are translating from academic English into human English. Let's look at a fourth one, cognitive dissonance. This one sounds the most like a medical diagnosis, but it just means that uncomfortable feeling you get when you have two ideas that don't match, or when your actions don't match your beliefs. For example, if I know that eating sugar is bad for me, but I am eating a giant piece of cake, I feel cognitive dissonance. I feel uncomfortable because my action doesn't match my knowledge. To say this simply, you can say, my actions don't match my words, or I have conflicting feelings about this. Let's practice that second one because it is very useful for any decision. I have conflicting feelings about this. Your turn. I have conflicting feelings about this.
That is perfect for when you are undecided. Let's try a more specific version. This doesn't feel right because it goes against our values. That is a simple way to describe cognitive dissonance in a company. You feel like the decision is wrong for the identity of the group. Let's practice. This goes against our values. Try that. This goes against our values. Let's expand it. This decision goes against our values. Repeat. This decision goes against our values. You see how we are building the sentences step by step? We start with a small piece and then we grow it.
Now that we have these translations for the big words, let's talk about a very powerful technique called the In Other Words bridge. This is a lifesaver for English learners. Sometimes you might actually use the big word because you just heard it in a podcast. You might say, I think we are dealing with some confirmation bias here. But then you might see that people look confused. Or maybe you feel like you didn't explain it well enough. That is when you use the bridge. You say, in other words, and then you give the simple version we just practiced. It makes you sound very sophisticated. It shows you know the technical term, but you are kind enough to explain it simply for everyone else.
I love that technique. It gives you a safety net. Let's practice the bridge. We will say the big word first, then the bridge, then the simple version. I will say it first, then you repeat the whole thing. We have a lot of heuristics in this process. In other words, we are taking too many shortcuts. Now you try. We have a lot of heuristics in this process. In other words, we are taking too many shortcuts. Let's try another one. This is a classic case of loss aversion. In other words, we are afraid of losing what we already have. Your turn. This is a classic case of loss aversion. In other words, we are afraid of losing what we already have.
Let's do one more with cognitive dissonance. I am experiencing some cognitive dissonance. In other words, my heart and my head don't agree. I love that simple explanation. Let's try it together. I am experiencing some cognitive dissonance. In other words, my heart and my head don't agree. By using this bridge, you are practicing the high-level words so you don't forget it, but you are ensuring that your communication is 100% clear. This is the secret to sounding like a C2 speaker, even if you are at a B1 or B2 level. It's about clarity, not complexity.
Exactly. Now, we've talked about what to say, but we also need to talk about how to say it. This is the third part of our lesson, the professional calm routine. When we are nervous about our English, we tend to speak very fast. We want to finish the sentence quickly so we can stop talking. But when you are discussing complex topics like decisions and psychology, speaking fast actually makes you sound less confident. If you want to sound like an expert, you have to slow down. You have to use pauses. This gives you time to think, and it gives your listener time to process your ideas.
This is something I struggle with even in my native language. When I get excited or nervous, I speed up. But in English, if I slow down, I actually make fewer grammar mistakes. It gives my brain that extra half second to find the right verb tense. Let's practice a slow down routine. We are going to say a sentence, but we are going to put a deliberate pause after the first few words. Listen to me. Based on the facts, I think we should wait. Did you hear that pause? It makes the sentence sound more important. Let's try it. Based on the facts, I think we should wait. Your turn. Based on the facts, I think we should wait.
Let's try another one with a pause. In my opinion, we are playing it too safe. Notice how the pause after "in my opinion" makes the listener lean in. They want to hear what comes next. Let's practice. In my opinion, we are playing it too safe. Try that now. In my opinion, we are playing it too safe. Now, let's combine it with a simple explanation of a bias. Looking at the data, we might be only seeing what we want to see. This is a long sentence, so take your time. Looking at the data, we might be only seeing what we want to see. Let's try it again together. Looking at the data, we might be only seeing what we want to see.
That sounds so much more professional than just saying we are biased very quickly. It shows you are thinking. Now let's talk about the physical part of this calm routine. When you say these sentences, try to relax your shoulders. If your body is relaxed, your voice will sound deeper and more stable. Let's practice a very simple stalling phrase. This is a phrase you use when someone asks you a hard question about a decision and you need a few seconds to think. Instead of saying, or I don't know, you can say, that is a very interesting point. Let me think about that for a second. This is a classic calm move. Let's practice it. That is a very interesting point. Let me think about that for a second. Your turn. That is a very interesting point. Let me think about that for a second.
And while you are thinking, you are actually using those simple patterns we learned. You are deciding if you want to talk about shortcuts or risks or conflicting feelings. Let's try another stalling phrase. I haven't looked at it from that perspective before. This is a great way to admit you might have been biased without sounding like you failed. It sounds like you are open-minded. Let's practice. I haven't looked at it from that perspective before. Try it. I haven't looked at it from that perspective before. One more time, very slowly. I haven't looked at it from that perspective before.
Now, let's put all of this into some real-world scenarios. Imagine you are at work. Your team is deciding whether to spend a lot of money on a new marketing campaign. Everyone seems very excited, but you feel they are only looking at the positive side. You suspect confirmation bias. Instead of staying silent, and instead of using the big academic word, let's use our simple tools. You could say, I'm glad we're excited, but I'm worried we're only seeing what we want to see. Can we look at the risks for a moment? Let's practice that whole thought. It's a bit longer, but you can do it. I'm worried we're only seeing what we want to see. Try that first part. I'm worried we're only seeing what we want to see. Now the second part. Can we look at the risks for a moment? Try that. Can we look at the risks for a moment? Now let's put it together. I'm worried we're only seeing what we want to see. Can we look at the risks for a moment?
That is such a strong way to contribute to a meeting. You are helping the team avoid a mistake, and you are doing it with very simple English. Let's try another scenario. Imagine you are talking to a friend who is unhappy in their job, but they are afraid to leave because they have been there for 5 years. This is loss aversion. They don't want to lose those 5 years. even though they could find a much better job. You want to give them some advice. You could say, "It sounds like you are focusing more on what you might lose than on what you might gain." Let's practice that. It's a very helpful, kind sentence. It sounds like you are focusing more on what you might lose than on what you might gain. Try it. It sounds like you are focusing more on what you might lose than on what you might gain.
That is a very sophisticated observation, but look at the words sounds, like, focusing, lose, gain. These are all words you probably learned in your first year of English study, but when you put them together like this, with a calm pace and a clear structure, you are performing at a very high level. You are discussing the psychology of choice without any of the jargon. Let's try one more scenario. You are choosing a vacation destination with your partner. You want to go somewhere new, but they want to go to the same beach as last year. They are using a heuristic, a mental shortcut. You could say, "I know the beach is our usual rule of thumb, but let's try something different this year." Let's practice using that idiom we learned earlier. I know the beach is our usual rule of thumb. Your turn. I know the beach is our usual rule of thumb. Now add the second part. But let's try something different this year. Try that. But let's try something different this year. This is the power of what we are doing today. We are taking the theory from those C2 podcasts and turning it into your reality. We are making sure that what you learn doesn't stay in your notebook. It stays in your ears and in your mouth. Now we are going to move into a longer repetition phase. This is the part of the lesson where you can really relax. We are going to go through a list of simple decision-making phrases. I will say them, and I want you to shadow me. Shadowing means you try to say the words at almost the same time as me, or immediately after, mimicking my speed, my rhythm, and my tone. Don't worry about the grammar. Just focus on the sound. I'll join in too, Anna. Sometimes it's helpful to hear two different voices. Listener, just follow along. If you are walking or driving or washing the dishes, just let these patterns sink in. We will start very simple and gradually get more complex. Let's begin. I need to make a choice. I need to make a choice. It isn't an easy decision. It isn't an easy decision. I'm weighing the options. I'm weighing the options. On the one hand, it's cheaper. On the other hand, it's slower. On the other hand, it's slower. I'm trying to be objective. I'm trying to be objective. I don't want to make a mistake. I don't want to make a mistake. Good. Let's keep going. Focusing now on those biases we simplified. We might be taking a shortcut. We might be taking a shortcut. Let's slow down and think. Let's slow down and think. Are we only seeing the good news? Are we only seeing the good news? Let's look at the other side. Let's look at the other side. I have a conflicting feeling about this. I have a conflicting feeling about this. It doesn't match our plan. It doesn't match our plan. We are focusing too much on the past. We are focusing too much on the past. Let's look toward the future. Let's look toward the future. You are doing great. Now let's practice those in other words bridges again, because these are so useful for building that C2 style sophistication. I'll say the technical version, and then we'll say the bridge together. We are experiencing choice overload. In other words, there are too many options. Let's repeat the whole thing. We are experiencing choice overload. In other words, there are too many options. Let's try another. This is an example of the halo effect. In other words, we like one thing about him, so we think everything about him is good. That's a long one. Let's break it down. In other words, we like one thing about him, so we think everything about him is good. Now the whole thing. This is an example of the halo effect. In other words, we like one thing about him, so we think everything about him is good. That is a classic bias that we all have. We see a person who is well-dressed and we think they must be smart. That is the halo effect. But you can just say, we are letting one good thing influence our whole opinion. Let's practice that simple version. We are letting one good thing influence our whole opinion. Try it. We are letting one good thing influence our whole opinion. One more time. We are letting one good thing influence our whole opinion. Let's do one more bridge. This decision is based on a heuristic. In other words, we are using a rule of thumb. Let's say it together. This decision is based on a heuristic. In other words, we are using a rule of thumb. Notice how using the word heuristic makes you sound like you've studied psychology.
but the rule of thumb part makes you sound like you are a practical, easy-to-understand person. This is a very attractive combination in a professional setting. People want to work with someone who is both smart and clear. That is so true. Clarity is a form of respect. When you speak clearly, you are showing respect for your listeners' time and energy. Now, as we move into the final part of our long session today, I want to talk about the concept of the quiet conclusion. Often, when we have to make a decision, we feel pressure to be loud and certain. We think that if we say, "I am 100% sure," we sound more fluent. But actually, in advanced English, we use hedging. Hedging means using words like perhaps, it seems, or I tend to think. This sounds much more professional and thoughtful. It shows that you understand that decisions are complex.
I love hedging. It actually makes me feel safer when I speak. If I say, I am sure, and I am wrong, I feel embarrassed. But if I say, it seems like we should wait, and it turns out we shouldn't have waited, I was just sharing an observation. It's a great way to protect yourself. Let's practice some calm hedging phrases. It seems to me that we are rushing. Try that. It seems to me that we are rushing. I tend to think we should look at more data. Your turn. I tend to think we should look at more data. Perhaps we should reconsider our shortcut. Try that. Perhaps we should reconsider our shortcut. Notice how the word perhaps at the beginning of a sentence instantly makes you sound more academic, but it's a very simple word to use. Let's try another one. From what I can see, we are focusing too much on the cost. Try it. From what I can see, we are focusing too much on the cost. One more. I'm starting to feel that we are only seeing what we want to see. This is a great way to introduce the topic of confirmation bias very gently. I'm starting to feel that we are only seeing what we want to see. Try it together. I'm starting to feel that we are only seeing what we want to see. These are so good. They help you navigate difficult conversations without creating conflict. Now, let's do a final marathon of all the phrases we've learned today. We will go through them one by one. This is your chance to solidify everything. If you find one you really like, try to imagine yourself using it tomorrow. Here we go. We are using a mental shortcut. We are using a mental shortcut. As a rule of thumb, we keep things simple. As a rule of thumb, we keep things simple. I'm worried we're only seeing what we want to see. I'm worried we're only seeing what we want to see. We should look at other perspectives. We should look at other perspectives. We are playing it too safe. We are playing it too safe. I think we are focusing too much on the risk. I think we are focusing too much on the risk. My heart and my head don't agree. My heart and my head don't agree. This decision goes against our values. This decision goes against our values. In other words, it's a difficult choice. In other words, it's a difficult choice. That is an interesting point. Let me think. That is an interesting point. Let me think. I haven't looked at it that way before. I haven't looked at it that way before. It seems to me that we need more time. It seems to me that we need more time. I tend to think we are taking a shortcut. I tend to think we are taking a shortcut. Perhaps we can find a better way. Perhaps we can find a better way. You have done an incredible job today. We have covered a lot of ground. We've taken the scary academic world of C2 psychology and brought it down to earth. We've learned that heuristics are just shortcuts, that confirmation bias is just seeing what we want to see, that loss aversion is just being afraid to lose, and that cognitive dissonance is just a conflict of feelings. We've also learned how to use the in other words bridge to connect big words with small ones, and how to use the professional calm routine to slow down, pause, and sound more confident. And remember, you don't have to use all of these phrases at once. If you only remember one or two from today's session, that is a huge success. Maybe tomorrow you can try using in other words in a conversation, or maybe you can try to hedge your opinion by saying I tend to think instead of I am sure. These small step-by-step changes are what lead to real fluency over time. You are building your English piece by piece, and you should be very proud of that. Before we finish, I have a small challenge for you. Think about a decision you have to make this week. It could be something big, like a career move, or something small, like what to eat for dinner. Try to describe that decision to yourself using one of the biases we talked about today, but use the simple English version. Are you taking a shortcut? Are you only seeing what you want to see? Are you afraid of losing? Just say one sentence out loud to yourself. This simple act of connecting the lesson to your real life is the final step in the understand, listen, repeat, remember process. It's been such a pleasure practicing with you today.
If you found this session helpful, please do give this video a like. It really helps the YouTube algorithm show our lessons to more English learners around the world who want a calm, relaxing way to study. And if you haven't already, please subscribe and join our community. We have many more long-form sessions planned to help you build your English step by step. We want to be your companion on this journey, whether you are commuting, working, or just winding down at night. Thank you for your time, your focus, and your energy. You are closer to your goals than you were an hour ago. Keep listening, keep repeating, and most importantly, keep believing in yourself. You have the ability to communicate complex ideas clearly and professionally. You just proved it today. Have a wonderful, calm day or evening, and we will see you in the next lesson.
Goodbye for now, and keep practicing. One step at a time. You are becoming the English speaker you want to be. See you soon.